Listening to music is so much a part of everyday life that it seems hard to imagine that only 60 years ago, recording was in its infancy. Well, what was it like to record in the beginning? In the first place, it was all done without electricity. Instead of a microphone, you played or sang into a large collector horn, and it drove a needle that cut a groove directly on a wax disc. It helped a lot if you were loud. Never mind any subtleties. It wasn't perfect, but it was music. Electricity made it much easier for the engineer to record. The devices it helped produce, like amplifiers and microphones, improved the quality of the recordings a lot. But it wasn't until the invention of the tape machine that engineers and musicians got the kind of control over the music that they'd been looking for. The magnetic tape recorder made it possible to record a song several times, and with a razor blade, cut up and splice together the best passages of each take. Recordings now began to represent a musician's best efforts. Now he had the freedom to extend himself, to stretch out and go his limit without worrying about mistakes. If they happened, they were simply cut out. Now, this was a big improvement, but everybody still had to play at the same time in the same room, just like the good old days. When stereo happened, the engineers decided to split the tape down the middle to get the two independent channels. And when the musicians found out that they could separate the two channels, the next thing they wanted to be able to do was to record them at separate times. And if two channels were good, how about 3, or 4, or 24? The multi-track tape recorder not only changed the way music was made, but it allowed the making of music that was impossible by any other means. The one-man band was no longer a novelty or a joke. If you played more than one instrument, or one instrument more than once, you could now hear what you sounded like together. Songs could be put together section by section, instrument by instrument, and even if necessary, note by note. A not-so-good ragtime piano player who had a little trouble keeping it together could play the left hand and then overdub the right hand and turn out to be a not-so-bad ragtime piano player. Now, the example may be a bit extreme, but it is possible, and so is quite a lot more. What makes it possible? Simulsync, and this is the musician's dream come true. The 3340S has the extra circuits and switches, and they're on the head stack, that allow you to convert any channel on the record head to a playback head. Using one head to do both jobs, both listen and record, ensures that all the music ends up in the same place on the tape, simultaneous synchronization. So when you're done and you play back, it all plays back together. Well, that's the theory, and probably the easiest method of showing you how it works in practice is to do something. First, you have to have something to record. After you have the idea worked out, it's usually best to begin with something simple and steady, like a rhythm guitar part, so we'll put that on track 1.
Let me see now, rhythm guitar.
Now you rewind the tape, and here's where we make the record head do all the work. We're going to listen to track 1 in the sync position and record a second part on track 2. Now you got a problem. Now, since you can't see what's on the tape, you're going to have to give yourself some kind of a cue so you'll know when to play, which means you'll have to record the rhythm guitar part again.
No rats.
And this time with a count-off.
All right, now. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now, after you get it together with the machine, you're still going to have to get it together with your music, but now you have as much time as you need. Your rhythm guitarist is on tape. He never gets tired, and he always plays exactly the same part. So you can practice and record the melody as many times as it takes to get it right.
I'm going to pick it till I learn it.
Well, suppose you have a friend and he also plays the guitar. You don't have to do it all by yourself. Play what you've got for your friend and he can make up a part of his own. But if you change your mind later, you can always take his part off track 3 and put something else on, like a bass part. Now you still have one track left to experiment with, track 4. So...
Oh, I really love my TEAC. Tape recording is a lot of fun.
Now what you put on the last track is up to you. There's nothing to prevent you from putting more than one sound on it, as we've done here. And for that matter, what you put on any track is up to you. There are no rules. There are guidelines in getting the balance right between two different sounds into one mic. But there's no substitute for hands-on experience. Make your own guidelines. It's your music and it pays to experiment. And just as it's possible to record two sounds with one microphone, it's also possible to record one sound with two microphones. So let's try that next. A piano in stereo. Now this piano is a very small upright, and to get the sound we were looking for took some time and quite a lot of listening. We started out by pulling the piano away from the wall and listening to it from all sides, and we ended up crawling on our hands and knees around the back. And that's where we finally put the microphones, one at each end of the soundboard. And now let's change the music. Now if the music is different, perhaps the sound should also be different. Here we have the same piano player, and the same two microphones. Only the placement of the microphones has changed. They're now 6 feet over the piano. Now the microphones are far enough away from the instrument to pick up the sound reflections from the walls of the room it's being played in. Different rooms produce different sound characteristics, and the same room sometimes produces different sounds in different places in it, so you can try them all. And with an instrument a little more portable than a piano, a guitar, say, you can record in a hallway or a bathroom, and everyone who's ever sung in the shower knows the glamorizing effect of reverberation. Echo and reverberation are technically not quite the same thing, even though the terms are used somewhat interchangeably. Echo is one repeat, an echo of the original. Reverb is many repeats, many echoes of the original, each one altered by how far away the reflecting surface was that caused the echo. You can simulate natural reflection of sound by making use of the distance between the record head and the playback head on your tape recorder. You can get one echo, or by looping the signal from playback to record, get many echoes or reverberation. The effect sounds like this if you use 7.5 inches per second to record at, and like this if you use 15 inches per second. The spring echo units in guitar amplifiers sound like this, and as long as you can get in and out with your signal and back to your tape recorder, they're very usable. But if you have no guitar amplifier or spring echo unit, but you do have some spare stereo gear, you can use a loudspeaker and a microphone to make an echo chamber out of your bathroom. Now let's try for a big change. Now that sounds like a large gong, but let's hit it again. Now that's the sound you'd expect. It's a regular cymbal. Now the difference was where we put the microphone, again. In the first place, the microphone is only 1/2 inch from the edge of the cymbal and was played very lightly. In the second place, the microphone was 10 inches away and we hit the cymbal with a drumstick. Now this kind of experimenting can save you a lot of money. Chinese gongs are very expensive. You don't have to go to a drum shop to get percussion effects. You can try your kitchen. Now, all the sounds you hear now are being made with a 1-quart pot, a vegetable strainer scratched with a spoon, a cardboard box, and a very ordinary book of matches brushed back and forth on the pants leg. Now, in reality, the cardboard box is quite loud, and the matchbook is very quiet. But if you have a multi-channel machine with all the sounds separate, balancing them to get a good mix is quite easy. You just turn down the loud one and turn up the soft one. Now we'll show you an effect that's possible only with a tape recorder like the 3340S. The sound on the left is a guitar. In fact, it's the same guitar as the one on the right. And the difference is one was recorded at half the speed of the other. Now, how do you make this effect? Well, you start with the guitar on the right and slow the tape down. And you listen to this sound and record another part. And you can see it sounds quite normal at this speed. Now here it's a big help if you have something stable like our matchbook track. Then when you get all done, you go back to normal speed. And you have the effect. And if you like, you could do it the other way around and make one part play an octave lower. Suit yourself. It is possible at this point to combine the first three tracks onto the fourth. Erase the first three and continue, but if we'd done that here, we wouldn't have been able to show you the instruments one at a time. And so to continue, we're going to use some more equipment. A small mixer, and another tape machine, and also a spring echo unit like you might find in a guitar amp. Since our fourth track is still open, we're going to record another high-speed guitar part before we continue. Now we're going to take these four tracks and combine them in a mix, which we'll call our basic track. Now, since we'll be putting more parts on top of this, we'll leave the count off on the transfer. Now, track 1 on our new piece of tape contains all the music that was on our old piece of tape. That leaves us 3 tracks to work with. And we added 2 percussion parts and a bass guitar part. Now, to get the first percussion part, we went back into the kitchen, got a pop top and recorded it with a lot of echo. Now, to get this bass drum effect, we put a microphone inside the reflex port of a loudspeaker and tapped the outer edge of the cone. Then we recorded the bass. But instead of using an amplifier, we plugged it right into the machine, direct. Now, you could consider this a finished product. It's quite complete as it stands, 7 different parts. But let's go on and mix it down again. Now, a bass player might think this mix is perfect, but this piece isn't a bass solo, so let's turn it down a little bit before we make the second transfer. Now, if this was a song, you do the vocals now. But since this is an instrumental piece, let's try something melodic, something like a vocal. Now, that sounds a synthesizer. It's an ARP Odyssey. And the people at ARP Instruments were kind enough to loan us this one for our record. Now, if you have a part, synthesizer or anything else that you like, but you're not quite sure you'd like to keep it, don't erase it. Do another part. And yet another. And make up your mind when you have several to select from. Vocals are often done this way. Now let's play them all together just for fun. And there you have it. 10 separate parts, all made by one musician over a period of several days. And yet the finished piece only takes 2 minutes and 20 seconds to play. And it's quite a bit different than where we started from. A matchbook and a guitar. Creative musicianship and the improvement of the music was and is the reason for the development of the multi-channel tape recorder. Now the 3340S has many nice features like 10.5-inch reels, 3 motors, and 3 heads. But SimulSync is not just another feature. In truth, it has nothing to do with the fidelity of the recording. It is a music-making tool that is basic to the musician's interest in multi-channel work. And it's the necessary function that allows you to draw a truce in the war between time and art. It gives you the opportunity to improve your music and your musicianship. You can keep the good and redo the not-so-good, and you can do it in private. You can become performer and audience, student and teacher. You can expand and multiply your music, and you can get it from your head onto the tape. With the 3340S, your instruments and your talent, your musical dreams and fantasies can become audible and permanent reality. Now, on this record, we have shown you some simple and not so simple examples of how to use this machine, not the least of which is this entire two-sided album, which we did with the 3340S. But to be honest, we ought to talk a little bit about simple and not so simple failures.
Rats.
Rats! Rats!
The 3340S is, after all, a machine. It's not a human being. If you expect it to operate itself, it will disappoint you.
Rats.
You're going to have to learn which buttons to push and in what sequence.
Oops.
Going to have to learn how to clean it and demagnetize it,
Geez, it didn't make that much noise last week.
and also how to have patience with yourself when you do make mistakes.
Rats!
Running out of tape in the middle of a recording,
Rats.
putting too much level on the tape,
Rats!
not enough level on the tape. It's true you do need patience if your tape sounds like this, but perhaps some music is better than nothing. And the ultimate disaster, perhaps, is erasing a tape that you have worked on for weeks. That's not funny at all. All of the examples we've showed you, both the successes
Yeah.
and the failures,
Rats.
have happened many times to many musicians. And the information we've collected and presented here is not the work of a public relations firm or an advertising agency. It came from the people who have used the 3340 and the 3340S to make music with. We've showed you some examples of what you can do and what you'll wish you hadn't done with this tape recorder. The other side of this record is a history of what one group of musicians, the Hello People, who bought a 3340 actually did, and how they did it. So turn the record over and we'll show you some more.
Why do you stare at me? Please always do the way you look when you're looking like you love me. It's so wonderful, so wonderful.
I think you guys should hear that one.
I don't know, Ian. It's a little shaky. I'm afraid of that.
No, it really sounded good. Come on in.
Come on in, and we're going to listen too. The music that you're about to hear is being made by a group called Hello People, and they're recording at home. Now, the tape recorder that they're using is a 3340, and the technology that produces and supports it is from TEAC.
I'm ready in here. Bobby, could you get a little closer? And Larry, just back off about an inch or two.
Okay, back. How's this go? Here we
That sounds a little better.
go.
Okay, Norm, you ready? Well, if you are, slate it, would you?
Yeah, right here. This here's Kriego, take one. Hey, Greg, could you hold it for a second? I lost my pitch. Hit an E there, would you? Larry? Yeah. E minor.
Recording is the union of technology and art, and understanding how this happens involves not so much seeing where one ends and the other begins, but rather in hearing how the two fit together. And there's a story here. It has everything to do with why this band bought a 3340 9 months ago and how they've used it since. So this record isn't so much about the 3340 as it is what the 3340 is all about, the making of music.
North of South America is a place called Hayesville. Everyone made bricks there. There is no one there now. You got a good latitude. You got a good longitude. You got bad vibrations. Stay away from Hayesville. South of the North Pole is a place called Beetlejuice. No one knows what is there. No one has really been there. You got a good radius, good diameter, bad location. No need to love it till you get to feel you.
Hello, people. Greg Geddes, guitar and soprano saxophone. N.D. Smart II, drums. Lawrence Tassi plays keyboards, 3 to be precise. And Robert Sedita plays guitar and bass. And they all sing. Now, on the last tune, if you head it up, it comes to 14 parts. Obviously, they weren't all done at the same time. The song you just heard was not recorded live. It was cut at home. And it took a lot of time, a lot of work, and a lot of talent to make this recording. It didn't come easy. Musical instruments don't ever play all by themselves, and tape recorders don't record just because you stick the plug in the wall. But people do learn how to make music, and people can learn how to operate a tape recorder. Hello People did, and they got it, on tape. Now, we're proud that they used a TEAC tape recorder to do it, but how they did it really isn't our story, it's their story.
I can recall, a lot of time spent in the studio with this band and in other bands, and I've never really paid attention to the electronic recording technique. I just took my money as a studio musician and left because, I'm not going to be an engineer. I'm a musician, man. you dream about being able to record in a house, but that's, you know, that's a dream that drummers from Dayton, Ohio just don't dream.
See? Well, if that's true, why did you buy the machine?
Desperation.
I remember.
Do you?
It's
I
your love
can't.
of toys, man. I remember it specifically. Hey, man, look at this new machine. This, you can overdub on it. I remember it specifically. Yeah. I remember, hey, we
Oh,
gotta-
no
we gotta
doubt,
get
feature,
one of
yeah,
these.
that's true.
Because that was like, remember when he,
Yeah.
when he came around with the ad? He
But
says, look, you
we were
can
almost
overdub at
bought.
home.
Yeah.
That and an amp. That was it. That's all
It's
we
really weird.
started
And
with.
we assumed just because you could overdub on it, you know, we'll get us a little mixer, and just because you could overdub, everything would be all right. You know what I mean? It's just like, because like before you'd be making a tape at home, you know, and everything would have to go down at once, and just the possibility of getting another try at the vocal, you know, that you could go over and over and over again. Before it was sound on sound. If you messed up the vocal, you messed up the track. I remember the first tape was like straight into the machine.
This morning, as I was dreaming, I heard a song I was singing for you. It was a sad, sad song. The color wheel started spinning. I saw your face, it was singing me too.
But what did your managers say when they heard these tapes?
Some of those are nice ideas. Here's some money. Go into the studio. And what I mean is, and that's where we learned that the money was better off spent in the house. Short runs in the studio just wasn't hooking it, man. Everything we had was almost.
In the studio, it was great. You know, you get all 4 monitors going and assign a different thing to each monitor. It sounds like King Kong. But you take that, you know, full track tape into some dude's office, it just sounds like
The
hell.
hard about it was that after that experience, even now, and other people learned that if they wanted to give us something, they was better off giving us a piece of equipment or making that kind of thing possible than short runs in the studio.
Yeah, in other words, basically it was time.
Yeah,
Sure,
because
you can't
you'd run out of-
give people that are trying to prove themselves 6 hours
prove
of sudden death football.
You have days and you have days, and even if you have a great day, 6 hours ain't enough to make a great tape, or 8 hours, or 12.
Okay, when did you start really working on engineering, Greg?
We had a quarter track, 7.5 IPS stereo, you know, blank tape recorder that we just stuck some mics into and fooled around with sound on sound.
He's always been the electronic spearhead of the band. I mean, I can remember you thinking about mixes and stuff, you know, clear back in the old days, you know.
I got a thought. Greg, who engineers when you play?
Norman, and then comes Bobby, and then last comes Larry.
Larry's a claw and he punches out. He punches record every time you get him near the machine. He'll just punch record.
You gotta watch out for this guy.
Yeah.
What's wrong, but
He's a good player, though.
yeah.
If Greg has to, like, he can't engineer all the time, so if he comes out here, you know, in the studio to play, he gives, like, a quick set of last-minute guidelines, you know, and it's like you're up in a plane and the pilot hands you the controls and says, rudders for your feet, you know, ailerons for your hands, and then he dives out the plane. And that's it, you know?
Yeah, I don't think it's that scary. Well, I
But
don't
yeah, it
know.
is, man. It's kind of frightening.
When you start?
Yeah, when you start, it is frightening because, like, you got this basic track done that sounds great, you know, and press the wrong button, you're gonna wreck it. You know, 3 days of yelling and arguing and trying to get it right, and then, you know, the wrong button goes down, and
Friends of
there it
mine
is.
Friends of mine say that you're not a real engineer until you've erased at least one master.
I guess you ain't a real engineer yet.
I am.
Larry's a real
That was
engineer.
Larry.
What was the first tune you guys recorded in stereo?
I don't even remember what song was the first song we did in stereo. I don't even. My knowledge is so recent. Probably when we started working stereo, I didn't even know what stereo was, other than when I said it on the record.
Well, you do now.
I meant right and left, buddy.
You know what stereo is now, Norman?
Sure. Right and left, buddy.
Yeah, sure is a lot going on there. That tune has a lot of parts.
That's another good thing about the machine, too. It punches in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really true. That surprised us. It really surprised us. Man, I remember when we first found out that you could punch in, you know, in the middle of a song, like play half the song and get that part right. And if you make a mistake, if there's a hole where you played, you just, you know, you let it run to that point, and where the hole is, you know, press record on that track, and then you can continue playing. And it's like there's other machines that are supposed to be able to, you know, to overdub on that I've heard about, but this is the only one that we've tried that you can punch in on.
I see 2 machines now. Do you have a third one buried someplace? Extra one for echo or something? Yeah, just the 2.
Yeah. We've had the advantage of having a very good friend who's our salesman, PJ, Paul Perez. The initials don't jive, but that's his name, PJ. And some friends that help us as a band a lot of times in our PA work, Steve Barker and Steve Selberg, who've, you know, putting all their talents and equipment together. We've had the advantage of seeing, I think, what works and maybe what doesn't. You know.
You're allowed to try stuff out before you laid out the hard cash.
Yeah. And plus, if you have a rapport with somebody that is doing the sales part, they're in touch with it every day, and their job is to be familiar not just with the best necessarily, but everything. And they can give you shades from top to bottom.
B Dolby units. What do you think about them?
I think they're great, simply because you get a signal noise advantage that you have to have if you're gonna
Be
move
tracks.
tape.
Yeah,
Right.
moving text like we're talking about. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Tell me, if you had it to do all over again, with the traffic noise and the kids and the dogs, do you still think working at home is where it's at?
It puts a little more adventure in recording when you got to get that vocal before the truck rolls down the hill. You know? It's an adventure, all right.
How about the rest of you guys? Do you really think it's helped your music?
As musicians and songwriters, it's just helped tremendously. You know, there's no doubt about it.
It's really, I think it's made an impression on your playing, the bass playing.
Yeah, it has helped me a lot.
In all honesty, there's been hundreds of times we thank God that machine's been here, but you don't go around saying the 3rd, 2, 4 is great, you know. Because that's true. You know, we dig the machine. It works.
And it takes people to make it work. When we first heard the tapes that this group produced using our tape recorder, we were really impressed, and that's why we asked the Hello people to help us make this record. But TEAC wasn't the only company that was impressed by their product. On May 24th, 1974, the Hello people signed a 5-year contract with ABC Dunhill, and we're sure that's not the whole story either. There's a lot more to come. Now, how do you get 14 separate parts on one piece of tape? Well, it requires 3 generations. And the Hello People's method of recording has been worked out over a period of many months and takes advantage of the fact that there are 4 musicians in the group. To begin, Greg records the drums, the bass, and the rhythm guitar in stereo. After everybody is satisfied with the stereo rhythm track, the feel, and the performance, this can take some time. They have 3 completely different beginnings for this tune. Norman and Bobby go in and record Greg playing guitar. And then Greg comes back in and checks out the guitar part. When that's all over, they go out and record Larry on track 4 playing electric organ. Now all 4 tracks are filled up, so they mix them down to stereo and continue on a new piece of tape. Now, track 3 on the new piece of tape has Norman singing the lead vocal.
North of South America is a place called Haydenville. Everyone made bricks there. There is no one there now. You got a good latitude, you got a good longitude, you got a bad vibrations.
And all the rest of the band singing a background vocal part. Now everybody sings once, and then they all sing the same parts, lead and chorus, again. Now this part goes on track 4 and turns 3 singers into 6, and adds a lot of punch to the performance.
South of the North Pole is a place called Beetlejuice. No one knows what is there. No one has really been there. You got a good radius, got a good diameter, got a bad location. You need a rocket ship to get to Beetlejuice.
Where'd you put the guitar solo?
The guitar solos are punch-ins on the same space of tape as you would as the vocals are on. So in other words, the instrumental section doesn't have a vocal over it, so they're punched in following the vocal and taken out before the vocal comes back in, which you want to make real sure you do.
Who did the punching? Obviously, you're the lead guitar player in the band, so what...
Norman did, our drummer. Someone that's very time-conscious is a good person to have punching the button, and he is, of course.
The final step in this process is, of course, the mix. 4 tracks down to 2, and that makes the 3rd generation. It's band 2 on this record, if you'd like to hear it again. Now, most of the uses of simulsync, the what-ifs and the wouldn't it be nice if I coulds, were thought up by musicians as solutions to musical problems. And it's interesting to speculate on what would have happened to music if Bach had had a multi-track tape recorder with simulsync. The reports that come back to our main office about what people do with the 3340 range from songwriting to symphonies, tape productions of Hamlet, all the way to rock and roll. And perhaps it is a little early to talk about the historical significance of the multi-track recorder. After all, the oldest one in existence is only 16 years old. But one thing is certain. Just like the guitar or the piano, multi-track recorders have become a part of music. They're here to stay. Their impact on the music of today is undeniable. And what effect they'll have on the music of tomorrow, well, only time will tell.
And now on track 4, the overdubs the electric bass.